That's probably a good time to jump in and kick off this webinar. So welcome everybody to our webinar, Deciphering Your Content Maze with Rustici Generator. You'll probably figure out who we are by looking at this slide. I'm Tammy Rutherford, the Managing Director here at Rustici. Reed, tell us a little bit about yourself.
I'm a developer for Rustici Generator.
Excellent. Yes, just as our names say. Anyway, we're here today to tell you a little bit more about Rustici Generator, which is the first AI-enabled product offering from Rustici, and we're really excited to share this with you. So let's just dive right in, and we'll talk a little bit here about what we're going to go over today. So, and you'll notice here on the chat before we jump in too far, little housekeeping notes. We will be taking questions and answers, but to keep things flowing, we'll hold time at the end for those. So please feel free to use the Q&A panel that you'll see here on the side. And you'll get some notes and things from the team behind the scenes. We've got Tara and Alicia and Josh keeping us real on the back end of things and helping us manage those questions. So please keep those coming, and feel free to use the chat as well. And for those of you that joined early, if you have ever been in a corn maze, let us know. If you have a preference of the time of day you would prefer to do your corn mazing, that would also be interesting. But even
Can I
more,
be a little pedantic? We
please
want to
do.
know which time of day is the corn maze the scariest? I said nighttime, Tammy said daytime.
Correct. Well, yes, that's correct. So let's dive in. What we're going to talk about today, we're going to introduce you to our new product, which is called Rustici Generator, and we'll give you a high-level overview of what that is. And this is really kind of a what we built and why session today. So what did we build? Product called Rustici Generator. Why did we build it? We've served a lot of different customers across the learning industry, and we see some pretty common problems that show up when it comes to managing content. And we took a look at things and said, hey, with this new AI capability that seems to be more readily available than it has been before, are there places we can incorporate that into the products and services that we bring to our customers? And Generator's where we landed. We're going to do so it's a little bit of why did we build this and how do we build it? And Reed's going to dive into the how does it work section, and we're going to tempt the internet gods and all sorts of gods here and do a live demo. So you always know how those go. So fingers crossed. And then, as I mentioned, at the end, we're going to have some time for frequently asked questions that you've provided with us to us today, and questions we've heard along the way from some others. So yeah, let's dive in a little bit deeper. We've invited lots of people to this session today. We've recently done a similar session with our customer conference, our Rustici the Gathering, that many of our customers have attended. But this session today has been open to anybody. So not everybody here in the room with us today is a customer. I do see that there are a lot of familiar names on the list. But just as a quick background on who Rustici is before we kind of set the stage further, we've been in the industry for a long time. Most of you probably recognize our name and think about us when you think about things like SCORM and XAPI and those e-learning standards. So typically when a standards-based acronym shows up, Rustici Software's name usually shows up in that conversation. We've been doing this for a long time, a little over 20 years at this point. And we've really honed in on solving some very specific problems for the industry, leveraging these standards and helping our customers implement e-learning standards in their applications and content so that these things play well together. So content publishers work with us to help make sure that how they present and deliver their courseware to their customers is playable in those learning management systems. And learning management system providers and other learning platforms leverage our software under the hood to enable their customers to import, launch, and track any type of content they bring to the table. And so we've really solved the problem on both sides of the equation. Whether you're creating content or playing content, chances are good that you're probably using Rustici software somewhere in that transaction. The products you're probably most familiar with that we offer are, I'm going to start with SCORM Cloud because that's the product that most people have used. If you've ever tested a piece of content, a SCORM file that you might have built in an authoring tool, for example, chances are good you've come over to SCORM Cloud. That's the default testing tool for the industry, really. So we see lots of people come to us to test content. Cloud also acts as it's a little bit of a jack of all trades for us. It tests content. You can import, launch, and track content and deliver it to your learners. And there's also a distribution functionality called SCORM Cloud Dispatch that you can use. Other products that you might be familiar with are Rustici Engine. It's the product we've worked on the longest. And many of our LMS customers all around the world use Engine to solve that problem for importing, launching, tracking all of the standards-based content that you see here on the list. And then Content Controller for customers that really are trying to solve the problem for distributing courseware across multiple LMSs, whether that's content publishers or organizations that have multiple LMSs they serve content to. Content Controller is likely what you'll see as a solution there. So people in the room, you might be one of these customers. People that aren't a customer yet, if you've heard of these names, that hopefully gives you a little more context on who we are and the problems we've solved to date, because it will matter as we start to talk about where does Generator fit in the mix. And we work with a wide variety of customers. So we have about 2,000 customers all over the world, and they fall into a few different categories. As I mentioned, the largest percentage of our customers today are vendors. They use our software to make their learning technology product better. But we also work with government agencies that have specific needs, as well as organizations and associations. So we work with a wide variety of customers, and we've learned a lot along the way. And that learning has helped us figure out what's the next problem we can solve. So that's where we will move on to Generator, talk a little bit more about that. So Rustici Generator is a content parsing service, and it's leveraging AI to help you make the most of these content libraries that you've been building up along the way. What we've basically done here is taken a look at what's the problem that we're uniquely positioned to solve for, and our products help customers manage content, right? Importing this content, launching and tracking content, and that was great. And we helped everybody build these large libraries by being able to be inclusive and providing the ability to import many different types of content. And over the years, those content libraries have built and built. But now it's becoming a little bit more difficult to figure out what's in those libraries. So Generator at its heart is a content parsing service. That doesn't sound too exciting, so we thought we'd jazz it up a little bit with a name like Generator. But yes, it's a content parsing service that basically deconstructs that content, reads it, and then is using AI to figure out what's in that content. So let's pick through it. And when you're parsing through that content, we can now find things that are missing, whether it's metadata. It might be a poorly described title. It could be a summary or description that you'd like to add to that course. It could be just tagging. What the heck is this course all about? And that could be skills-based, trying to help you figure out what's actually not just in your library, but what's really in your library, what's in that content package that's in your library. So we're using AI to parse that content, generate that metadata, and other resources that we'll talk about. And because we're doing all this work, one of the benefits of being able to do this is that we're enabling a better search performance. Knowing more about what's in that content library helps you figure out what's in that content library and finding it when you want it. So high level here, we're really talking about a service that takes the heavy lifting off of our customers when it comes to parsing content and better organizing it in their libraries to basically make it a better learning experience for your customers, to know what's in your library and surface it when and where you want it. And you'll see here, we've started with Rustici Engine. So it's an API service. So it sits alongside Rustici Engine, and it's been built and tested against Engine. So our Rustici Engine customers will be the likely first customers or users of Generator, but it is agnostic. So while it works best with Engine, it also works on its own. So you don't have to have content from Engine. You don't have to have your content in Engine for it to work with Generator. You can actually stand this up and put any content you want in it. We're just going to be pretty opinionated and know that it works really well with Rustici Engine. So let's move along now to some key features that we've got going on here. So as I mentioned, it's a parsing service. So it's going to ingest and process e-learning content. When we say content, what does that mean? We mean media file, multiple modalities, really, media files as well as packaged e-learning content. And for those of you that have worked with us for a long time, usually we're super pedantic when it comes to the type of content that we work with. And we're going to go down to the level of SCORM 2004, second edition. When it comes to Generator, when it comes to parsing content, standards are actually not relevant. And when we first said that internally, we went, wow, that's probably the first time we've ever said something like that. But when it comes to parsing content, believe it or not, what standard that content shows up at is fairly irrelevant in this context. So when we tackle this problem, we're looking at the modality and the packaging of that content versus the standard that it's in. So Reed will dig a little bit more into that as we get into the nitty-gritty details coming. But it makes us start to look at content types by modality and packaging. So think about an MP4 or a package coming from a certain authoring tool versus what standard that package shows up as. So a little nuance there, but what it does mean is that we're solving this problem at a slightly different level when it comes to e-learning content. So first step is we have to ingest it and parse it and process it, sort of unpick that thing and figure out what the heck is in that course. From there, we're able to generate metadata and resources. This is everything from titles, as I mentioned, descriptions, to tagging for skills. So we'll tag it for skills, but you also might have your own taxonomy that you want to bring to the table. So you will be able to bring your own skills taxonomy into Generator so that you're sifting and looking through and tagging for skills that are relevant to you, your organization, and your use case. On the resource side of things, a couple of things come out of Generator once we've parsed it. And for video files or MP3s, MP4s, we're going to create transcripts. First step to be able to parse anything is we're going to have to transcribe it. So transcription will come out of that first processing step. We'll create these VTT files is what they're called. And we're going to use that to suggest the metadata and skills tagging that will come next. Artifact of this process, though, is that you'll end up with a VTT file. So if you didn't have one already, Generator will now produce one for you that you can then bring back into your video-based content. Super helpful if you're trying to tackle things like accessibility or closed caption, and you haven't already done that. Other resources that Generator will be generating or creating for you in this first release, basic questions. So you can create a set of questions based on the content that you have and be able to kind of look at those. And, human in the loop will always be available here to be able to assess, is that say yes or no? So accept that these questions are correct. So those are the basic resources and metadata coming out of Generator in this first release. Along with the metadata and resources, we've got lexical and semantic search. So this is how do I know it's in my library? How do I find what I want in my library? And this lexical and semantic search enables you to more smartly find what you need using natural language. And we're looking not only across the library at high level title based, but also down into the library to know, you might be 4 layers deep before you figure out that course is actually aligned with the question or the topic you were looking for. And as I mentioned, we've pre-built an integration for Engine. So out of the gates, if you're an Engine customer, you're going to be able to move a little bit faster, but it's also will be available for folks that don't necessarily use Engine today. Now we get into the boring features. So here we're going to get into a little bit more of the details around some of the things under the hood that I'm going to hand over to Reed, but this is really just an example of the things that we really do well here at Rustici Software, where we've built this intentionally. We love solving boring problems that nobody wants to solve. And so content parsing, particularly e-learning based content parsing, is a hard problem. I just came back from DevLearn, had several conversations with people, and this one consistently came up around, yeah, we can do this, we can do this, we can do this. Ooh, that one's hard. And as soon as we hear somebody say, ooh, that one's hard, we say, cool, let's give it a whirl and see what we can do here. So we tackle hard problems, but we're also building this intentionally. This isn't a POC kind of MVP sort of, well, it is an MVP, the first release, but this is built for scale. So we've been very intentional with how we've built this. And and been very intentional about thinking about the future and where our customers want to take this next. So with all of that said, I'm going to hand it over to Reed to talk more about the boring features in front of us.
Yeah, this slide title was my idea. I kind of strong armed marketing into letting me have this slide because, I mean, like Tammy said, we are very much interested in doing work that is uninteresting for your team, but that doesn't mean our team has to do it. And I wanted to make sure my team got credit for all of the not fun and flashy stuff that we had to do to make this a real app that actually solves your problem and doesn't just like get your money for a year and you realize it's vaporware and walk away. So like we've got this huge layer of user management. A lot of this is inspired by the user management controls in Rustici Engine, and then also inspired by some of the friction we had with Content Controller. With at first we had relatively minimal user managements around like who could access what. So out of the gate, we're pretty opinionated about that, and you can customize that to your needs. You can just let everyone see everything. You can let this one person only delete this one course, whatever you want. We've also architected this from the beginning as separate services for the API and the back-end task management. Again, this is lessons learned from all of our other software. Cloud's been doing this for a while, and so we stole the idea from them because when I was working on CC, there's been a couple times where it was painful we weren't doing it this way. So out of the gate, we're doing it a way that we know has been helpful previously. Very much inspired by Engine. We've got a configuration framework with inheritance layers, so you can set like a system default or a tenant default. And then in the future, we'll probably expand that to a few other ways. And right now, we've only got 10, 15 settings, so it's no match to Engine's roughly 60,000 settings, but we'll get there eventually. Data tenancy right out of the gate. So, we separate data at the primary key level under the hood. So if you've got these two customers and you want to use their data in Generator but want to keep them separate and don't mix crossing the streams, we got you covered. We've got webhooks right out of the gate. So this is a thing that we came for CC a year or two ago, Tammy? Something
Yep,
like that.
that's right. Yep.
Engine also not quite as recent, but fairly recent Engine lifespan. We got that out of the gate because we know that's what people want. And speaking a little broadly, a little more future-minded, for anyone interested, all of the large language model stuff is using Claude Instant as our base model hosted in AWS Bedrock, but we want that question to be basically irrelevant. We know that the AI field is moving super quickly. I mean, OpenAI is coming out with new ChatGPT models every 6 months, a year. So we've been working on this for almost a year. We don't want to get locked into anything and then in a year you're stuck on some crusty old model. So right now we're using Claude Instant. It worked well as we were testing. It's pretty cheap, but the next shiny new thing, not shiny new thing, the next provenly good, definitely an improvement thing, we can swap the models out pretty easily. And if there's a particular model you want to use, let us know. We can probably fit it in there. We really want it to be just like we are e-learning interoperability. We're planning to do the same thing for different models. And Tammy,
Awesome.
this is
Yeah.
back to you.
Yeah. And I think those boring features might be boring to some, but for people here that are thinking about how does this integrate with my product, this is who we designed. That's why we spent some time on that. We know that this will be integrated into another product offering. So we're going to see the demo here in just a little bit, and you'll discover pretty quickly that Rustici Generator is an API-driven service, and it's really important to land there because this is intended to be helping another product leverage the AI content parsing capabilities that Generator offers in your application. And that's why so much care has been taken to think about all of the ways somebody would need to integrate into their multi-tenanted application, for example, if you're an LMS provider. And I love that we're thinking about the interoperability of the models and flexibility there. If anybody has been developing with AI over the last, 2.5 years at this point, or even back earlier than that, you've probably built and thrown away a few different things as things are evolving so quickly. It's a little bit of a moving target. So we really wanted to make space and create that flexibility for what's the next iteration of whatever sort of AI enabled platforms, applications, LLMs that we see out there. So that's a little bit about Generator, what it is, the feature based. Why did we build it? And this is where, we look at the problems. I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but the problems that we start to see coming in, we've made it so our software, as Reed mentions, multiple modalities and multiple interoperability. We support many standards. We make it really easy for our LMS customers to say yes to their customer when they show up with a wide variety of content. That's the goal, right? An empty LMS is useless. So for our customers, Engine helps them say yes to customers bringing in and importing multiple types of content. And that's fabulous. But what's happened over time is that we've seen these growing libraries. So content libraries are continuing to add more and more and more as customers continue to create courses with their authoring tools, find off the shelf courses they want to bring into the application, maybe even bringing in some stuff that they've built natively in the LMS itself. And more content isn't always necessarily better, it's just more. And so as content libraries grow, it makes it harder to actually find what you need if you're not thoughtful about how you organize things. And this is a problem we're seeing on both the platform side of things, as well as with content providers. So the first problem we're solving here is, integrated with Engine. You will see the capabilities we talk about with Generator coming into Content Controller sometime in 2025, and that's really where our content providers are going to have that advantage, being able to take advantage of all these features within the Content Controller application. But both sides of the equation show up here, where growing libraries might not always be great unless you're managing them well. And that's hard to do if you don't even know it's in there and you kind of just keep piling up layer over layer. Um, Not always necessarily the great thing. Not all of that pressure is going to turn into diamonds. So you've got to figure out what's in that library. And as we see libraries grow, chances are good that they're not all the courses coming in aren't always nice and tidy. You don't necessarily have well tagged content with actually complete metadata, a description, a title that matches maybe a format that you have. So when content shows up and it's not well organized, it makes it even more difficult to manage that content. And we're seeing this problem on both sides of the equation. And all of this makes ultimately the thing at the bottom here the problem that you're going to be bumping into, which is, how do I know what I have? How can I find what I have? And it just compiles. So as you get more content in there and it's not formatted in a consistent way, it makes it really difficult to find what you need. I often explain or equate this problem to my closet. So I have an order of things, but I don't always take the time and effort every time I put away my laundry to put everything where it's supposed to be, right? So I might get a little bit lazy and put things where it's the easiest for me to get to or easiest for me to put them away. But what it makes it harder for later, and where I pay the price later, is future me hates past me because now I can't find the shirt that I want to find, that I want when I need it. And ultimately what it turns into is me taking everything out of my closet, finally finding it, and wasting a whole bunch of time and probably being slightly frustrated in the process. So let's not do that, right? So how do we help solve this problem of helping you manage your content libraries a little bit easier, figuring out what do you have? And this sums it up really well, which is, we're going to fill in the blanks. But metadata is going to be one of the places where you can actually make your courses more tidy, follow the organizational path that you want, to help you find what you need and ultimately when you need it. So this is that just continuity of being able to work smarter with your library and being able to surface it when you and your customers are looking for things. So that's a lot of talking on my side of things. I'm going to hand this thing over to Reed at this point so we can really dig in under the hood. And I hope you're excited to get a little bit more in the weeds on the technical side of things, to help you see what's actually happening under the hood.
Yeah, so Tammy's talked a lot about like the problems we're solving and then generally how do we solve them. I've been working on Generator for actually over a year at this point. So I'm pretty equipped to explain like what we're actually on the ground doing. So like Tammy said, the three major parts here are: we're parsing the content, we're offering you a better search option based on like the contents of the course, not just what someone happened to name that PDF 15 years ago. And then we can generate metadata for you, which you can use in your system to your heart's content. But to start off, we're going to talk about content parsing. So I'm sure we've talked about it a little bit, but I want to talk more about what we can parse. So firstly, media content, which is kind of an internal term. What we really mean by that is MP4s, MP3s, PDFs. Uh, I can't say for sure because I don't have the authority, but like probably other video and audio standards in the future. MP4s and MP3s have been serving us well as a support standard on Engine and CC for quite a few years now. So that's what we're
Hmm.
focusing on for now. How we're doing that with audio and video is using AWS Transcribe. So we just send them the file, kick Jeff Bezos a couple pennies, and then he tells us what's in that file, who said what at what time. With PDFs, it's a pretty straightforward. It's just a Python library that cracks open your PDF and pulls out the text and gets it into a standard, just like text format. We support e-learning packages. Now, I know that we've heard from a lot of folks, this is maybe the most interesting part because with media content, I said we kicked Jeff Bezos. He's not even the AWS guy anymore, is he?
Andy
Who
Jassy's going to be the benefactor of that one, but
we kick someone in the sky a couple pennies and they tell us what's in a file. You could do that. The e-learning packages I think is a lot more interesting, and by more interesting I mean a lot more work. So like Tammy said, the standards are agnostic, which means a SCORM 1.2 course, the standard never defines how that course needs to store its text. So what I mean by that is if you've used the infamous Rustici golf course, the text is just baked into an HTML page because Mike Rustici wrote that 20 years ago, and that's kind of how we did web pages 20 years ago. If you export a file from a Captivate course these days, the text you need is going to be like double encoded, and then it's in a JSON file, which is inside a JavaScript file. It's a whole mess. And so we actually have to, like, for each learning standard that we've supported so far, crack open the course, look at what it looks like in the browser, try to find that text somewhere in the course files, and then reverse engineer how that's all packaged together. So that's what we mean by Rustici is comfortable doing the boring work, because I'm sure your developers didn't get hired at your place to learn how Storyline packages the conditional formatting of only show this slide when this button. Like, we've had to go and do all that nasty work. And now we can actually crack open all of these authoring tools so far, and presumably more in the future, depending on what y'all need. We go in, we pull out the text, and we get it into this standardized format, like I mentioned, doing with PDFs and audio files or media files. We also support web pages, so that's just like on the internet. So Wikipedia has been our primary testing for this. If you've got a web page on the internet that has some text on it that you want to get into Generator, we can do that. Give us the URL. We'll go and crawl around with some configuration options on how the spider works. Like we're kind of doing, if you're familiar with how search engines work with spiders, they crawl around your web page, following links, extracting the text, arranging it into, again, this standardized format so that once we have it, we can treat it like anything else. And I think the other option is raw text. What we mean by that is if you've got a text file with some stuff you want in Generator, just send it to us and we'll handle it. Pretty straightforward. So once we've parsed it, what are we actually doing with it? So I mentioned how each standard is supported and how we get that text. But what do we do with it? So a big part of this process is to standardize all of these different modalities into a single, here's just a string of text, and we can work with that. Once it's parsed, we save the literal text to a database for lexical searching and embeddings of the text. And put a pin in the word embeddings because that's probably not familiar. We've got a vocab lesson in a little bit. The text is used, like I said, for lexical and semantic searching and also for generating metadata. That's how we can generate a potential title, is we have the text of it, we talk to the model and we say, hey, I've got a course that says this, what should I call it? That's a great use for LLMs. It's this sort of reductive, finding the important bits, summarizing it, that kind of stuff. Parse text isn't exposed on the API. So like Tammy said, if it's a media file, you can get the BTT. If it's anything else, you can get it through a JSON format. We break it down roughly by location. What location means obviously varies between a PDF and a MP3 and a e-learning course. But we try to keep it abstract, very similar if you're familiar with the Engine API. You don't need to know the difference in completion details between CMI5 and SCORM 1.2. You just need to know what complete is. Same thing here. It's a location. Don't worry about it. Like we said, audio and video content can be formatted as a VTT. So we've done all this parsing, we've extracted it, we've saved it. Now we can search on it. So we've said semantic search a few times. I want to define that a little bit. So lexical searching, if we remember our Latin roots, which I don't, it's like letters or something. That's a very straightforward search. It's the Command F of your web browser. I search for the word dog. I can find the letters DOG in that order on that web page. Semantic search is much more interesting because it does a bunch of fancy math and look up words based on the meaning and the similarity in meanings between words using embeddings. So let's put our vocab hats on if you guys don't mind me talking a little more. And by a little more, I mean a lot more. Embeddings are basically huge groups of numbers. In linear algebra, this is called a vector. If you want to be a nerd, embeddings are big numbers. It's a bunch of numbers. I should be clear. And each number in this vector represents part of the words or the phrases or the texts or the course's meaning. And an embedding can be one word. It could be all of Wikipedia. And when I say by that, I'm going to give an example here. This is all oversimplified and a little too specific. Really, all of these numbers are magic made by a computer and fancy math, but oversimplified. If I took an embedding of the word wolf, we can all agree a wolf is about 80% of a dog. Like the similarity there is a lot, but it's not complete. Dogs and wolves are different. That's why they're different words. Wolves versus electrons is like pretty different. And I want to be clear, these percent numbers are completely made up. This is just on vibes, but
dog is 91%. I just learned this last weekend completely randomly. There you go.
I'll have to update the slides. Sorry,
I'll
Tammy.
update.
Wolves and electrons. I mean, electrons are in wolves, so it's not zero, but like it's not a lot. But if like outside, wolves are almost always outside. Hopefully, if there's a wolf inside, something's gone wrong. So like those are, let's say those are pretty similar. The planet Venus, I had to change this from the planet Pluto, which it was earlier, which two very helpful Rustici employees, meaning Tammy and one of the AMs, pointed out that Pluto is also a dog. So just to be clear, the planet
we think
Venus,
Pluto's a dog. Yeah.
the Pluto's biology is a whole thing. We can't get derailed on this, Tammy. The planet Venus, we can all agree, is extremely not a wolf. All right, but then just like do this for 1,000 different numbers, and also each number is basically math magic that doesn't mean anything specific, but like hopefully you're getting the idea. An embedding is this literally 1,000 plus collection of numbers, and each number is some math magic about what the word means. How semantic search works is, like we said, generator saves the course text, which is embedded into these vectors. We save it to our database. The user comes in and says, give me courses on canines. Now we know wolves, dogs, canines, all very similar words. So generator takes an embedding of the word canines, or whatever your search query is, and uses a bunch of math magic, I'm going to keep calling it, to find the embedding in our database that is most similar to your query. So if I had two embeddings in my database that were dogs and cats, I search for canines, dogs is going to rank higher in the search results because those mean the same thing, even though like cats is a more similar word to canines. That's what the semantic part means. Yeah, so then the user receives a list of relevant courses and locations based on the similarities of the records in the database to your search query. If that doesn't make sense, put a question in the Q&A. The magicians behind the scenes are accumulating those, and we'll talk about it at the end. That's how the enhanced search works. Let's talk about everyone's favorite thing, AI. All this generating metadata, and we're not going to get too hyped because, of course, I have to go back to a vocab lesson because this is just a whole bunch of stuff. What do we mean by AI? It's a buzzword that doesn't mean anything at this point. What most people mean and what we mean in this context is machine learning. And what machine learning means, in turn, is grossly oversimplified software that programmed itself through trial and error. Computers can do stuff really fast. how this works very abstractly is you've got a program, you give it a bunch of knobs, you ask it a question, it gives you an answer. You tell it how right that answer is. It twiddles some knobs, do the same thing 1,000 times. Which knob twiddling got me a better score? Repeat, repeat, repeat. Keep twiddling the knobs until you get a perfect thing, except there's, I think with the last GPT model, it's like 4 billion knobs, something crazy. It's bonkers.
Wow.
That's what machine learning is. So the machine learned based on a process that a software engineer designed, and no one programmed it, line by line. That's what I mean by part of this magic is no one knows why the model is making these choices. The model has just learned these are the right choices. If you've heard us say LLM, that is a large language model. It's basically a very complicated parrot, a very expensive, energy intensive parrot run by computers. And what I mean by that is through this machine learning process, the LLM was trained on data. It looked at, 2 million Reddit posts and probably the contents of Wikipedia and found out these words tend to follow these words. And it has this huge probability network that it can use to emulate speech, right? Because that's all speech is like grammar is just rules about which words follow what rules and in what way. And so when you train a model with 4 billion knobs over 2 years, the parrot gets pretty smart. It's like it's just a parrot. It doesn't actually know what it's saying. And then another buzzword you may have heard about is RAG. RAG is an acronym, not a noun. It stands for Retrieval Augmented Generation. And what this is an LLM can generate text, right? You ask it a question and it answers. But if you want it to answer a certain way, you can retrieve a document and hand that to the model and then ask it a question. And the context in that document helps it answer your question more specifically. Yeah, using documents to aid LLM generation. This is largely what we're doing with our metadata generation. So using RAG, we can prompt an LLM to generate potential metadata values. We parse the course, we break it down into text. We standardize it, not in a learning standards way, but in a, we get everything the same way. And then you can ask questions about any of those courses in the same way because we've standardized them all into the same interface. And we can use RAG to generate a bunch of stuff. We can give it the contents of a PDF and say, hey, what would you name this PDF? And it's pretty good at coming up with some names. Same with summaries of various styles and lengths. I think right now we're calling them summaries, blurbs, and plugs. We might add more, we might change them. Different styles and lengths. Keywords like what someone might search for to find that course. Identifying skills in a course. So you can ask it, what skills would someone improve by reading this lesson? And then, like Tammy mentioned, assessment questions. We can break the course down into bits of the text and say, hey, write a question about this. Right now, that's a pretty straightforward implementation. We've heard feedback from other conversations like this about using stuff like Bloom's taxonomy. We're very interested in that. If you have questions or concerns, reach out. We would love to hear what questions this is sparking in you, because it's probably something that we are interested in doing. Further into the metadata generation rabbit hole, we talked about skills and skill taxonomies. So skills is just another metadata that generator can generate. And we're going to try not to say the verb generate as much as we can, but no promises. If you're not familiar, skill taxonomies are documents that break down a list of skills. And these are huge. These are like 4,000 plus skills. A bunch of different vendors have these. And it's a way to standardize like employee improvement type stuff. So if you have one of these taxonomies, it's important that the skills we identify fit into your taxonomy, or else you have a drawer named mathematics, but generator says this course is about math. You don't have a drawer for that, metaphorically speaking. So if you give us a taxonomy, we will actually map the skills that we generate onto the ones in your taxonomy based on that semantic similarity stuff we talked about with the search. We take embeddings of both, find the skill in your taxonomy that's most similar to the skill we just generated, and we sort of like round the skill to match the language your taxonomy is expecting. We're also generating questions. This is far from a replacement for an instructional designer. There's a lot of work that goes into being an ID. They know a lot of stuff. We want to give them, take out some of the crud work. It's a starting point. The cool thing though is that it will include back references to where in the text we generated that question and answer. So that could be, here's a question on what does the median of a data set mean? And it will tell you that was on chapter 5 of that PDF or minute 4 of that MP4 or whatever. And all of these can be exported from Generator in CSV, JSON, and ACON formats. I think ACON is a Moodle or OpenLMS thing. It's a proprietary format that some assessment tools use. CSV and JSON is probably familiar. Oh, that's a lot of talking. Now, let's keep talking, but I can also show some stuff to you. So I've got this course here in Swarm Cloud. Judging by the title, I think it's probably a math course, but I'm going to show it off here. Oh, who would have guessed? It's about math. You can see here it's a bunch of stuff about a formula for determining a mean. There's audio playing, but I muted the tab to save all of you guys. I'll spare you the arithmetic lesson here, but this is just the proof that this is a real course.
I think this course is a storyline course, right? So I think one of the things we talked about earlier is we're focused more on the source of the package versus the standard of the package. So this is a SCORM. I'm not even sure what flavor of SCORM it is, but it came out. It's a story. It's an articulate storyline packaged course.
Yeah, thank you. I think we can check in Swarm Cloud.
Uh-oh.
Oh, I exited. That was safe. That was intended. Swarm 1.2.
Okay, so Swarm 1.2.
Like Tammy said, it doesn't matter. It matters that it's storyline because storyline decides how they store the text in their database. I saved you guys a little bit of time, imported the same course into Generator to save us the 50 seconds it took to upload and then minus the 20 seconds it took me to explain this. But this is Generator's demo UI. I'm going to say that again. It is the demo UI. It's the UI we use for demoing the application. Generator is an API service. This is just to show it off in a way that doesn't make your eyes bleed. There's not a UI that we intend you to use with the production application. Tammy, have I covered our ass enough?
Yeah, so, and there's actually a question that came in that's kind of relevant here that'll be important. Generator is an API service intended to work with another platform. And so LMS providers would integrate Rustici Generator into their LMS application. And then they would present something like this within that LMS application so that you're in that app, you're not in Generator, because as Reed pointed out, there's nothing to be in Generator. It's an API, which is a little bit, sorry, this is like a little bit ephemeral at this point, but just know that Generator is intended to be integrated with another commercial product. It's not a standalone product. We will be enabling a lot of this functionality in Content Controller. So we will actually be taking the Generator capabilities that we're looking at here today and surfacing them into Content Controller. So one of our products, Content Controller, and eventually Swarm Cloud, will surface this capability directly, but Generator customers will most likely be our LMS providers, unless you have an organization that has developers on your end to build some type of interface to know what to do, to show this to your users and to know what to do next with that.
Yeah, I was absolutely going to do the same caveat. I was like, if you love this and really want it, you could probably build something to interact with it. But it's not going to be nice to work with straight out of the box because you're not a computer, unless you are. Reach out to your AM and let us know if you're or the sales if you're not a current customer, and let us know if you're a computer. I've got the course.
I think
here
we're good
Generator.
on the PSA. Yep.
I also just noticed the time, so I'm going to start blasting away here. Tammy, tell me to slow down if I skip anything important. But I've got my course here. I'm going to generate a description. This is an API service, so latency is not like great. So we'll have to wait here a little bit. Great. Well, we got a new description here. So this is a course about basic level stats. I like all these summaries. Tammy, I don't know if you can read this, but do you have a favorite?
I feel like I'm gonna take away number one because sports might be a red herring there. Yeah, let's go with three.
Beautiful. So we can also generate a title based on that description. So I was a little misleading earlier when I described the RAG process. We sometimes use other generated fields to seed others. We've got a summary here that's enough to give us a pretty good title. Ooh, I like numbers don't lie.
That's fun.
Yeah. And so here you just saw I saved it, so I can do the same thing here with the description. By default, generator generates, I did it again, a handful of options for most of these fields. And you can either take all three of them, show them to a user, walk away, or you can tell generator which one was your favorite, and we'll lock it in. We'll deactivate the other one, so you only get that one. You can use generator as a source of truth, or just a thing you ask some questions to. I should have been generating stuff while I talked. Here's an example of a marketing plug, so this should be a little zippier than the full-throated description. Yeah, discover which average, median, mean, or mode best describes a data set. That's very active. You can get some blurbs going. It's even shorter, it's very catchy, like a little. And then I'll generate some questions, but this interface isn't great for questions. It's going to really fill the whole thing up, so brace yourselves. And it also takes a little bit because we have to generate questions and then answers. Did anyone chime in about scariest corn in the Q&A while we're waiting?
I have not seen anybody wanting to participate in that
Come on, guys.
conversation with.
Beautiful. Oh, all right. See,
Yeah.
sometimes large language models do something a little silly. That's why we generate a bunch of options for you. And I'll take this back to the team and we'll fix that. But you can see
Let's
here,
check out skills. Yeah, I'd love to see skills before we kind of move on.
I think I've configured taxonomy on this tenant that isn't great. So here, even if your skill taxonomy doesn't totally fit into the course you imported, we will snap to it.
Yeah, clearly and this is why we have things called, this is why you own a human in the loop in all of this, which is,
Yeah,
it's a starting point, as Reed mentioned. So starting here, saving or regenerating, right? So try again. So that's absolutely a component here. I don't think this course is about content authoring. That's fine. Let's start over. Like, but as Reed mentioned, that might be a place. Here's where like your keywords are absolutely going to be a little bit more qualitative.
yeah.
Um, yeah, so I am mindful of time. We do have some questions, so I want to make sure we hit those before the top of the hour. And this is, if you've seen, like, if this demo has sparked, curiosity for you, this is a first conversation, not a last conversation. So we're happy to do some more in-depth demoing for anybody that's here today that wants to dive in a little bit deeper. But let's talk a little bit about, I'm going to go over a couple of frequently asked questions. Actually, you know what? I'm going to go for the audience questions first, and then we'll come back and be crazy here and go out of order to make sure that the questions that's come in, because I think these are really great questions and others probably have them as well. So we've got one that, so I'm going to actually just go, somebody asked a question about questions. Does it only support multiple choice questions at this point, or is there any sort of question answer types that we have?
Right now, it's just multiple choice questions. But if more than that is important to you, please reach out. Like we're going to say probably for every question, this is a very early stage of the product's life cycle. We are very interested in getting feedback about what it doesn't do that you want it to do, what it does do that you don't like the way it does it. Let us know.
Exactly. This is definitely going to be a work in progress. I think things will evolve. That's exactly why we did that flexibility on the modalities earlier on. Let's see. So we have a question here about where do the e-learning packages have to be that Generator is parsing? Do you have to import them into Generator? Can Generator read it from a cloud storage location if we allow access?
We've actually got a few different options. Currently, there isn't actually a way to just straight upload it to Generator for a bunch of reasons that I'm happy to talk to in a more detailed setting. But we right now we can read it from an SFTP server. If you've got it in Amazon S3, we can read it there. If you've got it hosted on a web page or like on an internet accessible URL, we can use that. And depending on how you authenticate access, we also let you configure auth headers. So if I need a certain username or password, you can tell Generator, go to this URL and use this username password so your stuff isn't just exposed in the Wild West. And and like I mentioned, web pages, that's probably not what we're talking about. I think that's all we've got right now. But once we go public, the docs will be up there and you can see all the juicy details there. But we support a handful of ways to get the content. And if we don't support your preferred one, please let us know.
So that cloud storage is probably like maybe an S3 bucket that, hey, I have permission to go look at that S3 bucket and
Yeah.
process what's in there. Great. So we kind of answered this question earlier, but someone was asking if it would be required to implement Rustici Generator through our LMS vendor, or can we go directly to you to leverage this tool? And this is one reason why Reed and I maybe spent a little bit of an emphatic time on that API service piece. And when we're showing you the demo, there is a component here where some interface will have to be built on top of Generator. We imagine that this will be an LMS provider that will hook Generator service into their LMS application and take advantage of the interface and the user experience they've already built out, frankly, to further improve that learner experience. So if you already have an LMS, one of the first places you might want to go is to your LMS vendor to say, how can we do things similar to what we just talked about today? How do I manage my content library in your LMS? Are there ways that I can do this faster, smarter than we do today? So the capabilities that we've presented here today should be available through your LMS. If you want to go faster, one of the reasons why we decoupled this from Engine was to let people have access to the service to do things at their speed. It just requires resources and design and technique. You want to be thoughtful about how do you present this to your users and what happens next. And so that's where there's going to have to be a fairly tight connection with your LMS vendor to make sure the results of Generator end up where you want them to be so that they're usable for you later. If you want to shortcut all of that, you want the capabilities we've looked at, but you might need to go faster than your vendors. Content Controller will have this capability. So this will be a little bit more off the shelf, accessible for people if they want to go faster than their LMS might provide using Content Controller in the future. So depending on how important these features are to you, but start with your LMS vendor for sure. This one's probably going to be for you, Reed. Let's see. For video content, will Generator use OCR for on-screen text or even image recognition to dissect objects?
Oh, that's a great question. So for anyone not familiar with our acronyms here, OCR is optical character recognition, if I remember right. All that to say, not yet, not right now. We took the MVP approach. This is the first. This is what we needed to get the product to market. We're very interested in expanding it to meet requirements. Right now, it's just spoken dialogue, but we've definitely been talking for pretty much the product's whole lifespan about ways that we can improve that. So OCR on any like on-screen diagrams or whatever, similar with item dissection, we could say, oh, that's an engine and that guy took out the carburetor. Even if that's not said verbatim in the course, we're very interested in approaching that. Haven't gotten to it yet.
Excellent. Yep. Always a work in progress. And so these kind of questions help influence what we prioritize next. So that's great. Let's see. We had somebody asking, will Generator have the capability of searching content in uploaded learnings and videos? Yes. So when we are parsing this content, if I think I understand the question correctly, searching will be we're searching into the course basically. So the whole reason why we're spending the time to parse that content is so that we can actually know what's in there, because that's what's going to tell us which courses make the most sense to tell you about. And titles are never enough. Metadata is probably still never enough. So this is sort of the belt and suspenders moment of you can search across this library, but if we take the time to look down into the course, generate the metadata. You can now search across metadata, but you can also still kind of get into the guts of that course and go one layer deeper than you're able to. Gosh, not only one layer, several levels deeper than you're able to go today. So yes, that's the searching into and inside of the content is really one of the big value props here for Generator. Let's see, we have 5 minutes and the questions are coming in fast and furiously. How about multiple language support? Is it available? And I'm thinking this question is probably the generator, the results that Generator is returning. So we'll probably approach it that way because AI and translations can get confusing quickly. But Reed, I think for the minute it's an English only application.
For the minute, we've tested it only with English. I'll clarify that. I don't know it doesn't work with
Yeah.
other languages. All of the Claude models are actually trained primarily on English, but also on a bunch of other languages. So it's totally possible that the model is smart enough to read, 80% of this prompt is text from a German course, and then I ask it a question in English that say summarize the course. I'm not sure if it would translate it or if it would give you the German summary, but also we could very easily add a config option that says generate the summary in German, and it would probably do an okay job. Some of these models are getting pretty good at like cross-language training. So as most of these questions are, not yet, but probably maybe in the future, please reach out.
Yes, and I think if we've learned anything so far, the thing that's so exciting about this technology is how quickly things are moving
Yeah.
and solving problems that we've kind of ignored because they just felt a little bit too overwhelming or hard. And so yeah, so that's absolutely a place where things are moving quickly, and that's what we're trying to adapt for every time we see more use cases come up, and um, it might be easier to solve than we originally thought. Somebody asked a great question here is, will this be where is it hosted, or was this a cloud service? Um, and great question. So we have built this we're hosting it. So Generator is a service that we host here at Rustici. We use our managed hosting team and we host at the client level. So this isn't, while you don't have to think about hosting, it's not a full-blown SaaS product that's shared by many. We spin up and we will have independent private instances for each of our customers. So today it's a managed hosted service, managed and hosted by Rustici Software, that allows us to just go fast and support you as quickly as possible with things. We will probably tackle a self-hosted version of this at some point in time, but for now we're going to stick with the managed hosting out of the gate. And I think this is actually a nice question to end on here. Is there publicly accessible documentation and to get started or looking at how do you integrate Rustici Generator into your application? And we've got a web page that I think has been shared in the chat, and maybe we pop that back in here at the very end, that will have the updates. So again, this is moving quickly, so we'll be updating our web page and adding pages along the way, obviously, for the latest and greatest on Generator, which will include links to documentation once it's in a shareable place, which might be farther. It might be more shareable than I think right now.
So certain parts of them are very shareable.
Excellent. But yeah, so that's going to be really your go-to. As we wrap up today, thank you everybody for joining us and putting up with some of Reed's and mine shenanigans along the way. We will be sending out follow-up emails to everybody. So we'll have links to a lot of the resources that we talked about today. You'll have obviously access to this as an archived session as well. And again, this might be hopefully the first conversation we have with you, not the last one. So keep your questions coming and we'll try to point you to all the right directions and give you the resources, access to the resources as they continue to evolve. All right.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. All right. Bye-bye.